Hi, I'm Jesse Glenn,
I'm David Petersen,
and this is the Plotmasters Project,
a video podcast of two artists looking back
and revisiting their earliest characters and stories.
This time, dragons. Hi, welcome back to the Dragons episode, or the last of the Dragons, as we recently rechristened it.
Yes.
This is episode 2 of a two-parter, so if you haven't seen episode 1, now's the time to pause this video, go back, look in the playlist, look at episode 1, see the origins of the project, kind of where we were coming from. Last time we dealt with all the human characters. This time we're dealing with the actual dragons themselves.
Yes. So, once you get back from that other video, if you haven't seen it, come right back here and pick up right back here. So, quick recap though, just for the sake of it. This was a project that we started based on our enjoyment of the types of projects or properties out there like Voltron, like Power Rangers, where there was a group, usually above 5, and they each had a color, and they formed a super team of some sort. And we wanted to make something like that. And for this, we chose dragons. So we came up with these 5 characters: Gwen, Pierce, Felix, Nigel, Cornelius, and they each had a dragon. And they had to go on a hunt for the dragons, and they would find the dragons, and then they would fight the bad guys. Okay, so that's the gist of it. That's the gist of it. Right?
But we didn't get into the actual dragon characters. So,
Not yet.
Now we can show you the earliest of the dragon art.
Ta-da!
This is Sable. This is the black dragon. This is the one that is ridden by Cornelius. That piece of artwork is one that I pretty much did a direct copy of a magic card. It's a green magic card. It was some kind of a worm. I'm not remembering, but Magic the Gathering. I referenced that on how to draw a dragon properly back in 1995.
Yeah.
So I drew the first one, and then we had to come up with the other colors. We actually got into a little bit of a dispute over who drew this when we were doing our Baltimore panel, and since then we've both really looked at this piece of Roan. This is the red dragon, and we can't tell. We can't completely tell who drew this.
Yeah, we're fairly certain it was inked and colored by Dave.
Yeah.
But the pencils, I don't know, because sometimes we would ink each other's stuff.
I think we're going to lean towards that Jesse drew Roan the red dragon, and I colored and inked, or inked and colored. Let me go back to Sable, by the way, while we're at it. So the black dragon, we based these dragons, instead of having, like in Voltron, robotic lions, or in Power Rangers, the robotic dinosaur, prehistoric kind of characters, or various incarnations later on. We wanted something organic. We wanted these to be living. We decided we were fantasy guys, D&D players. We wanted these to be dragons, actual dragons.
Yeah.
And because we were D&D players, we based them on the chromatic dragons. So the black dragon of Sable has some of the properties that a D&D black dragon would have. So mainly the acid breath weapon that she spits an acid. And it's a she, by the way. We decided to make Sable, Cornelius's dragon, a she.
So with Sable, we took those elements from the types of dragons we knew, and we gave her the rocky skin, and it's something that pairs up with Cornelius, who came from more of a desolate desert background. We said this dragon comes from a similar place, so with the acid breath is something we tied into Cornelius's weapon with the corrosiveness, and making that rough hide and that rocky skin part of the exterior of the dragon.
Yeah, impenetrable, I think, was how I pictured Sable in terms of physicality.
Yeah,
there was nothing that could penetrate the skin. Armor plus.
Yes. Yeah.
For Roan the red dragon, we had in kind of hidden away in a pool of lava. I kept having these visions of them inside of like inside of a mountainous cavern, but it's all aglow from the molten lava and magma, and the dragon riders are looking for Roan, and out of just a pool of liquid fire comes Roan, the red dragon, who is a fire dragon. Unlike normal Dungeons and Dragons red dragons, where they're very big and beefy, we decided to make Roan much slimmer.
More of a nimble flyer, an acrobatic flyer almost.
Yeah, fire breath weapon, and yeah, nimble and kind of fast.
Yeah.
I think were the attributes.
Then Blisk.
Blisk, the white dragon. We're pretty sure Jesse drew this one, and then I inked and colored it. I'm almost positive I did not draw Blisk. Now that I've looked a little closer.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think. Who knows? But we Blisk was. I'm not sure we got much into personality-wise. I don't know. We'll talk about that later.
As a white dragon, though, frost, snow, cold, kind of breath weapon.
Yeah.
Obviously impervious. All the dragons are going to be impervious to whatever it is that they use as their breath weapons.
Yeah.
And that she would be found. Also, Blisk is a she, like Sable.
Yeah.
That Blisk would have been found in some snowy mountain. You know, the moment where the Fellowship of the Ring has to turn back because the snow is just piling on. That's the kind of location.
Yeah.
The Hook Mountain in Thundercats, that icy, permafrost. Hoth. These are the kind of locations we had in mind when thinking of where Blisk was hiding.
Yes, yes. And given that, I feel like that makes Blisk a very strong flyer. Whereas if we're talking about that sort of attribute, we had the rocky tough one,
Sure.
Roan being the nimble one, but because of the environment having to fly in storms and blizzards or whatever, it's just like Blisk has the endurance to just keep flying, through whatever.
Loden, the green dragon. Now, this is the first drawing, and Jesse actually, we're pretty sure Jesse did everything on this one. Jesse drew,
Yeah, I think so.
Drew, inked, and colored this one. And Loden being a green dragon, the breath weapon is gas, a poisonous gas. And the attribute would be strength. That Loden was just strong. Now, this first drawing of Loden, the design for Loden changed, and we'll get into some of those drawings later. The first version there has a very long neck. It almost makes it look like Loden's just a worm or a snake, kind of a serpent kind of a dragon. But later on, we get into really bulking him up.
Yeah, and he became, because whereas we talked about the flying abilities of the other dragons, Loden became a earthbound dragon. He's just too beefy, too heavy, wings aren't strong enough or big enough, and that becomes...
Yeah, and we see him, deep in forest. To go back to Tolkien, like Mirkwood, the kind of area where people don't go. Just the wild, weird forest stuff goes there. As we've continued to develop and get into some of these later drawings, just keep in mind, I started to think of Loden like a Miyazaki forest spirit.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the evocative image to have in your mind. And then rounding it out, the blue dragon.
Cerulean is the water dragon. That's the element that comes with that one. But it doesn't shoot water out of its mouth. We're keeping with, I believe it was still a D&D thing.
Yeah, lightning.
That it shoots lightning. That's its breath weapon is lightning. So we kept this design. You obviously can't see a lot of the body in this one necessarily. But this was a very sleek, slender dragon who both swims and flies.
The original drawing here was done by Jess, and including the I think the inks, and I don't know which one of us did the color marker on that. The pink spots that you're seeing are actually mold when getting stored and archived. Cerulean got into a box that had some water damage. And these pink blotches that you're seeing are actually weird little moldy growth spots in the paper.
Don't worry, it's okay. This is not the
This is a photocopy.
Yeah. No, you can't do that. No.
Oh, that's weird.
It's weird. It is. No, this is fine. This is fine. This is just a copy. It's safe.
Yeah. That's Cerulean.
Yeah.
If you haven't noticed, the names, all of the names of the dragons are other words for the colors that the dragons are. Jesse had this really great book. Do you remember what that book was?
No.
It was some kind of it wasn't a thesaurus. It It had a
Oh, it was called
thesaurus section in it.
Yeah, was it a reverse dictionary?
But
or
it wasn't a
something?
reverse dictionary.
had
It was almost just like random facts, and annotations, and it was like
Yeah.
it was like part Farmer's Almanac, part But it had its whole section that was other words for colors or words associated with colors.
Yeah.
And so we decided to just reference that. And so roan is red for the red dragon. Blisk is another word for off-white. Cerulean is a blue. Loden green. And sable is black. As we developed these characters further, Loden ended up becoming, like we said earlier, fat and land-based. Jesse drew a version of him that had kind of like elephant-style legs.
Yeah, I wanted him really stocky, really close to the ground. And in that first revision I didn't even give him wings, apparently. But he's got some horns to butt heads with, and
Yeah, the curly horns appeared in this version, and then the land-based and the big stockiness. I did some more revision of Sable, made her more rocky, kind of changed the shape of her head, and then played more with Loden, making him even fatter. I gave him little wings. I think I'm the first one that gave him wings back, but I liked the idea that they were so dinky that he couldn't fly. They were decorative. They were an evolutionary leftover. And then nothing really happened with Cerulean in terms of a revisit, just because the first version that Jesse did was really, there wasn't much more to do other than just define the shape and size of her wing or his wings.
Yeah. Was there much for Blisk?
I don't think so. Well, so that was the start, and then I did some larger inked revisions. I did them all on one sheet for some stupid reason. And the only one that I didn't redraw was Cerulean, the blue dragon. But I really honed in on the curved horns for Loden that you talked about. For Loden, we wanted his personality to be a bull in a china shop.
Yes.
Loud, garish, boorish.
Stubborn, doesn't pay too much attention to what's around him, just like if it's in his way, he moves it.
Yeah. And all of the personalities kind of sync up with the actual personalities of the riders. I think they were supposed to complement. They were supposed to be like giant shadows. The dragons were supposed to be giant shadows of, or giant reflection shadows of the riders themselves. And we actually figured that Pierce, being proud, being the captain of the guard, would resent getting the fat, flightless dragon. And at the same time would probably look at the personality of Loden. And if he was told, well, your dragon's personality reflects your own, he'd be like, I don't act like that.
He would be the most disagreeable.
I'm not stubborn. I'm not boorish. I'm not loud. And yet Pierce would be all those things.
Yes.
And Sable?
And for Sable, whereas Cornelius appears to be, kind of this big brute that you'd almost be afraid of, he's actually got the warmest heart, of just about anybody. And in that same way, Sable has this rough, rocky exterior, but is probably one of the most devoted and caring of the dragons, maybe even especially to her rider, than some of the others would be. Yeah, and we kind of figured that the intelligence level of the dragons were, slightly more than a loyal dog. They have some intelligence. Obviously, they know how to work some magic and stuff like that. But the dragons don't really speak to the riders. Yeah. There's no kind of, they're not an ancient wise dragon like Smaug or something like that. But of all the dragons, then Sable would actually be the one who was the most connected. They would have these kind of symbiotic, brain connection kind of things where they'd start to maybe know what the other is thinking a little bit, the riders and the dragons, but that the one who would have the strongest bond in that way would be Cornelius. And it's because of that compassion that both Cornelius and Sable would be so compassionate that they really understand each other and sync up. And with Blisk, given the situation that Gwen is in, and it's for her taking part in this team, it's about responsibility, it's about doing what's right. And Blisk is not a stubborn dragon, not overly heartfelt, not any of those things, but just like this is the job I have to do. and is devoted to that in a sort of way.
I always pictured her a little aloof. I mean, there's a, not to get into negative stereotypes, but we tried to make Gwen a little bit of a ice queen that eventually would melt and become part of the group and everything. But in that same way, Blisk would be a little aloof.
Yeah.
I kind of imagine like the aloof cat who just perches up high and is like, whatever you humans are doing is fine. I'm just going to sit here and watch. I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah, where like Pierce and Felix might get into a bit of a squabble, their dragons likewise might get into some disagreements, and Blisk would be sitting to the side and just waiting for you guys to be done, because
Yeah.
I don't need this mess.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Roan, the red dragon, would be very much like Felix, a hothead, kind of a show-off.
Yeah. Looking for adventure, maybe even looking for an occasional fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's Roan. With these revisions, I really just tried to go for improving on the shapes that were already there. I didn't do a whole lot. In fact, I took the original version of Cerulean and took out the marker color and added in digital color to match these revisions. These were from about 2000, I think, or maybe a little earlier, maybe 1999, 2000 era. And Cerulean as a character,
being the dragon of the outlaw type rider, I figure Cerulean might just slip off every now and then. I don't know, for whatever reason that he just thought of. Maybe just to have some fun. Also, being an aquatic dragon, there's going to be a lot of time that they're just on land, and that's where they are. And maybe Cerulean just needs to go for a dip. So, it's just the mercurial, like, where is this dragon right now? Oh, just off.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I like the wandering theme for Cerulean because it matches Nigel's kind of ranger outlaw thing.
Yeah.
Also the idea if Nigel is a ranger in terms of D&D classes, the idea that the other dragons would be with their riders or closer by, and then it's time to do something, that Nigel could, whistle, signal, call out, or whatever, and it's very much like a ranger's familiar with a hawk or something like that, except it's a giant blue aquatic dragon.
You wouldn't want that perching on your arm.
No. Just like always here on the Plotmasters project, it's not about just looking back. It's also about revisiting these characters and doing new drawings as though we were working on these projects today.
Yes. So, like always, we sat down and did our own individual revisions and put some things together. Am I going first?
I'll go first. So for Loden, I just really pushed that heavy, lumbering, land-based kind of dragon. I looked at some reference of crocodiles to get some of the leg movement, the leg look, some of the scale look, the little dinky wings. Other things that stayed were the curved horns and the spines that were actually on the original design that Jesse drew. But yeah, I just wanted Loden to look like this giant, lumbering... Again, I said Miyazaki was an influence in terms of the forest spirit kind of a thing. And then for Blisk, I did Loden first out of the drawings. And then when I was getting ready to do the others, I wanted to reference more than just real animals. I wanted to look at other people's dragon drawings. So I did a big Google search. I looked at a lot of other fantasy artists, people in both amateur and professional on DeviantArt and just whatever Google image search came up. And so for Blisk, I decided to change the dragon style altogether and to think about different cultures' versions of dragons. So Blisk was very much inspired by an artist's version of a Chinese dragon. And I added hair because I thought hair fit for a dragon that's going to be in the cold north.
Sure.
Some insulation. I also think that I kept the kind of umbrella-shaped head horns and tissue like the original, but gave Blisk this kind of magic hand gesture thing, because I started to think that maybe Blisk is the one who has some of the most magical power that's just not understood. I started toying with the idea that maybe Blisk can teleport.
Ooh, that's fun.
In addition to flying.
I think that's one of my favorite designs of yours. Is
thanks.
Blisk. I really like. It might be the hair. I really like the hair and the long body.
Cerulean, I could not improve on the original head that Jesse drew. I didn't do much other than just change the shape of the head fin to be a little bit bigger, and then actually design the body, because there wasn't really a version of Cerulean past the neck.
No.
And I don't know that we had talked about whether Cerulean had legs or not, but I thought I want to make Cerulean more like a wyvern with no legs. Wyverns have no legs, right? I'm pretty sure wyverns have no legs.
No, they have some legs.
Oh, wyverns have legs.
They have legs.
Whatever the kind of dragon.
Legs.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What has no legs?
Worms.
We'll go with that.
All right.
But I like the idea for an aquatic dragon that Cerulean wouldn't need hind legs, and just make the wings the thing. So I think Cerulean would have the biggest wingspan of all the dragons, and I tried to give some texture to the wings to look like some fishy aquatic real animal kind of spotting and modeling, that kind of thing. And the fins along the back are very much like fish fin, swordfish fin inspired.
Yep.
Sable, that big rocky texture. When I was doing these, I was thinking about how to play with body type, body mass, horn shape, head shape. I did look at this one. Was influenced by another artist's dragon's pose that just felt very regal. I felt like Sable doesn't have anything to prove, so she can just kind of hang out and look statuesque, also looking like she's made of stone. And that in terms of body shape, I think Sable is the one that I went the most traditional with. She is a traditional looking dragon in terms of the proportions. And then Roan. Roan I decided to make much smaller than the others, and play with the wings and play with all kinds of things that were spiky. Everything about the scale types, the back armor, the shape of the wing ridges, the texture on the wing ridges. Everything is spiky and like little dancing flames. That's Roan. I ended up putting a little bit more work in again this time, like last time, but it's themed. Last time for episode 1, I decided to come up with a villain, and that was a lich, so that the human riders had something that was a legitimate threat, a wizard so evil and so powerful that it could raise itself from the dead to do dark and evil magic. And so that as soon as they whistle and bring in the dragons, the lich isn't a non-threat anymore.
Ta-da!
Draco Lich. So the lich can ride a Draco Lich. I named the Draco Lich Aurum, meaning, which is the Latin word for gold. So while the dragon riders all have chromatic dragons, I thought the evil dragon could be one of the metallic dragons. And the Draco Lich is an undead gold dragon. I did a size chart just to kind of play with the scale and show a lineup of how all these characters look next to each other. The dragons look next to each other, how they compare in size to the Draco Lich. I wanted the Draco Lich to be large enough that it would be pretty obvious just looking at them that 2 of the dragons, maybe even 3, couldn't hold off the Draco Lich by themselves.
Yeah.
That's why it takes, instead of with a Voltron or something like that, or Power Rangers where they actually form into one Megazord Voltron kind of a thing. It's the teamwork of the dragons just all coming together, working together, that means that they can defeat the foe. And I needed to make the Draco Lich big and bad enough that it looked like it required 5 dragons to tackle.
It looks like it. It really does. All right, and then for mine, Well, Dave mentioned that he put a little extra work into the dragons this time around, and he still put in even more work. I took on a job last month, and I was also focused on launching a comic online. So I was kind of busy. So I drew my dragons, but Dave very kindly offered to color them. So you're going to see something that probably hasn't been seen in years, like an actual collaborative piece
Yeah.
of art between.
Well, we figured for the Plotmasters project, it's appropriate. I mean, I remember very early on us hearing about Eastman and Laird working on Ninja Turtles and trying to figure out like who did what, and it was that they literally slid unfinished pages back and forth in between, so you really couldn't tell where one began and the other ended. And like when we showed the earlier artwork of Roan, I mean, now as adults, we're scratching our heads and going, who drew that? Who did what?
Yeah.
So yeah, collaborating on these felt like a natural.
Yeah, so lines by me, colors by Dave. Here we go. We'll go ahead and start with what probably is like the most traditional looking dragon of the ones I did. I've got Roan, red dragon, and kept it slim, nimble for the most part, and kept the traditional, a lot of the traditional scaling and wing type because I wanted to keep that feel of that. The red dragon is just basically the most iconic of any kind of dragon in D&D or whatever in film.
Yeah, but generally they're big. They're
They're
massive. They're bodybuilder dragons.
Yeah, but I wanted to keep some of the spikiness. I gave like those horns in the front for some little spiked fiery effect. The head scales, the chest scales, the shape of that has a little bit of a flame feel to it. So I wanted to keep that going with this particular dragon, and give him he's got kind of a fierce attitude to his face and such. So that was my red dragon. Then for Loden, I switched things up a little bit. He's still the big bulky land-based dragon, but instead of going like the previous one I had done where he had the elephant feet, is just big and stocky and bulky, I slimmed him down a bit and went for more of that front-heavy bulldog look. Or even just a bull. So he's got big, massive, thorny horns up front, heavy plated forehead.
Is that for bashing into stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
just charging and bashing. But then, that bulky front, and just that's where the weight is, and just wanted to have that kind of feel. Just something a little bit more nimble, but definitely strength and land-based. Those were the kind of changes I made to this one. Like in the previous episode, I was like, with the human characters, you were taking them in a different direction, and I was keeping the human characters a little more traditional to
the original concept. Yeah.
The original concept. I think with the dragons this time, though, I'm going way off.
That's true. Yeah, I guess that's true. In our initial concept, the original dragons were very traditional fantasy dragons, and so this time by me doing very traditional fantasy dragons, it's not different, it's the same, whereas you're doing these much more different designs.
What should I do? Say that one
means
fast.
that you're doing the flip. You're doing the new design work.
So then for the black dragon, for Sable, I actually didn't keep the full rocky skin. The spotted texture I kept in there it gives a suggestion of rockiness a little bit, as opposed to having traditional dragon scales or such as the spotting. But I went for spiky. So it's still, the bristly and spiky, like with the acid breath and with the corrosion, and Cornelius's spiked mace thing that he has. I wanted to emphasize that this time around, and also kept her slim, maybe a little bit faster, scrappier dragon. Still built for flying, but also functional on the ground for wrestling.
Wrestling dragons.
Like as for the colors, I kept the I had chosen to do sort of like a rust kind of corrosion color on Cornelius's armor, and I wanted to keep that going in the dragon as well.
Yeah, when you sent your file over with some color notes, I was like, orange? Why do you want orange on a black dragon? But then, yeah, you explained it ties in with the Cornelius drawing, so it makes sense.
Yep. And then for Blisk, for the white dragon, I changed a few things. This was my other close to traditional dragon in terms of body type and things like that. Except I went with ears for whatever reason, just because I thought it would be interesting, and the horns on the top of the head, like those big elongated horns, I felt gave Blisk more of almost like a Nordic feel.
Yeah.
So it's like Viking horns on the ice snow dragon.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more heft to the body, perhaps fat stores for surviving cold, being a thicker bodied dragon, that type of thing. But certainly still looking like that's no hindrance to flight. Was my goal with that. And a little bit of, I added a little hair. There's a little bit of hair. There's a mane running down the back. Just because I like that look a little bit. So that's about what I got going for that one. And then the one design I kind of I wasn't sure what I was doing. I was like, I'm just going to make this long, flowy, weird dragon for Cerulean.
I think it's funny that I was like, yeah, you can't improve on Cerulean's original drawing by Jesse, so I'm just gonna you gotta keep the original. That's and you're like, that's the one I'm gonna totally redo. That's the one I'm gonna come out of left field with. I think it's the coolest design of your dragons for, this go around.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I kept all of the limbs of the body really close to the front, which is a strange thing. It's like the forelegs are very similar in size. They're up toward the front where the wings are. The wings are different. The wings are like fairy wings, not necessarily dragon wings. And then that long body just trailing out, and then fins.
Yeah,
I just like no, this is great. It needs little fins just for help swimming, just for steering the rest of that long body underwater. And then the fins on the top of the head. I wanted to do something different with like breathing too. I didn't want to make it amphibious and do gills. It's still an air-breathing dragon in some ways. So it's like, but it's weird and different. It's got 6 nostrils, right? 3 on either side, and then blowholes. Like along the back of the neck, you've got blowholes. Just because I thought it would be an interesting design.
No, it is cool.
Yeah, so that one really changed, and I think it really came out well. I think Dave did a great job coloring that one too. I think it's really nice.
So that's Dragons, or the Last of the Dragon, the Last of the Dragons, a project that Jesse and I started on in 1995 to kind of emulate the teams that come together, a la Voltron and Power Rangers. I think we did a lot of development on this one this time around. Yeah. I think that there are still a lot of questions to be answered in terms of story, and there's a lot more development that if this thing ever got off the ground of, and things that we brought up in the earlier episodes. How long does it take for the characters to actually interact with the dragons? What happens? What are the setbacks? Are the setbacks in the quest for the dragons, or the setbacks after they already have the dragons and stuff with the Lich?
Yeah. There's so much more we could get into, and the things that you have in your head are different than the things I have in my head, and we haven't really sat down to discuss that because this is not a real project we're doing. But if we ever did sit down, it's just like it would be one of those things that there's so much that each of us would bring to it, and what I say would change what he's thinking, what he would say would change what I was thinking, and then that would spur whole new ideas about where to go with this. Yeah. And there's so much to explore.
Yeah. So this was a fun old project to come back to, Dragons. Obviously it was fun enough that we had to split it up into 2 episodes. So that you guys could enjoy the revisits of both the human characters and the actual dragons. We hope to bring you some more Plotmasters soon, so keep your eye out, and thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.